Charles, for the love of all things holy, the ceremony starts in 10 minutes. Milo's voice cut through the chatter of the bustling village of Hawthorne Fields like a knife. But Charles, dressed in a slightly crumpled suit and with one sock still clinging to his elbow, seemed impervious to the urgency. "I swear, Milo," Charles muttered, fumbling with his tie, "time moves faster in this village. It's a conspiracy, probably orchestrated by the clockmaker, or by your perpetual inability to set an alarm." Milo shot back, dragging Charles by the arm toward the quaint chapel. The bells were already ringing, signaling the start of yet another wedding in the tiny village where it seemed everyone was finding love, except Charles and his eccentric circle of friends. Inside the chapel, the air was thick with anticipation. The bride, radiant in a dress adorned with lace, floated down the aisle. Charles, standing awkwardly as the best man, caught a glimpse of something, or rather someone, through the corner of his eye. She was seated near the back, her dark hair framing a face so striking it made his heart stumble. She was an outsider, clearly, her effortless elegance out of place in the cozy, homespun charm of Hawthorne Fields. "Who's that?" Charles whispered to Milo. "No idea," Milo replied, "but you're staring. Try not to drool." The reception was held under a sprawling oak tree, its branches twinkling with fairy lights. Charles found himself standing near the punch bowl, rehearsing excuses for why he hadn't delivered his best man's speech yet. "That punch looks dangerous," a voice said behind him. Charles turned to find the mysterious woman from the chapel. Up close, she was even more captivating. "Only if you drink it," he quipped, "which, admittedly, I have." "Twice." She laughed, a sound that sent a delightful shiver down his spine. "I'm Carrie," she said, extending her hand. "Charles," he replied, shaking it with a touch of awkwardness. Best man, worst dancer, eternal wedding attendee. The rest of the evening was a blur of laughter, stolen glances, and the kind of easy conversation that felt like it had been years in the making. As the village clock struck midnight, Charles found himself walking Carrie to her inn, the cobblestone streets illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked, stopping beneath the ivy-covered archway of her lodgings. "I believe in being perpetually late," Charles replied, scratching the back of his neck. "But fate? Maybe." "Well, maybe we'll test that theory," Carrie said with a smile before disappearing inside, leaving Charles standing in the moonlit street, hopelessly smitten. Weeks passed, and just as Charles was beginning to wonder if he'd imagined Carrie, fate, or something like it, brought her back into his life. This time, it was at another wedding in the neighboring village of Willowmere. Charles, still tardy and now wearing mismatched socks, spotted her the moment he walked into the reception hall. "Carrie," he called out, weaving through the crowd like a man possessed. She turned, her smile bright and familiar. "Charles, still late, I see." "It's a gift," he replied, breathless. Their reunion was short-lived. Carrie, as it turned out, wasn't just a guest at this wedding. She was engaged to the groom's cousin. Charles's heart sank as he watched her glide across the dance floor in her fiancé's arms. Milo, noticing his friend's despair, nudged him. "Bad timing, mate." "Story of my life," Charles muttered, raising his glass. The joyous rhythm of weddings was interrupted by a funeral, one that brought the whole village together in grief. It was Gareth, the heart of their little group, whose booming laugh and endless optimism would be sorely missed. Standing by the graveside, Charles felt the weight of time and loss pressing down on him. He caught sight of Carrie among the mourners, her expression somber. After the service, she approached him. "Life's too short, isn't it?" Charles nodded, his voice heavy with emotion. Far too short to keep missing chances. Despite his resolve, Charles hesitated. It was at yet another wedding, a grand affair in the heart of the countryside, that fate intervened once more. This time, Carrie was alone. "Your fiancé?" Charles asked hesitantly. "No longer," she said softly. Under a canopy of stars, Charles finally confessed his feelings. "Carrie, I don't know if it's fate or bad timing or just sheer stupidity, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel something every time I see you." Carrie smiled, her eyes glistening. "You're not alone in that." Months later, the village of Hawthorne Fields gathered once more, this time for Charles's wedding. As he stood at the altar, watching Carrie walk toward him, he couldn't help but grin. "Still late," Milo whispered from the side. "For once," Charles replied, "I think I'm right on time." Ready to improve your English in a fun and engaging way? Start learning through stories today. Subscribe to Learn with Godson and dive into captivating stories that will help you expand your vocabulary, understand sentence structures, and practice pronunciation. Stories make learning English exciting and memorable. Join us on this journey and watch your language skills grow with each story. The voiceover in this video is given by Learn with Godson. Copying or re-uploading is totally prohibited.